Okay guys, I want to clear up a couple things in Photoshop that are very easy to get confused about. And so the first thing I want to do is talk about importing images into Photoshop. And the reason is because of the three main ways that I import images into Photoshop, I can get three distinctly different results. And I want to start by explaining that. So, if we want to place an image inside of Photoshop and we go to File, you'll notice there's no real import. Well, there is an import option, but that's not what we want to use. Import is for video frames and things that we don't generally use. So instead of importing an image, what we want to do is place our image. If you've ever worked inside of InDesign you always place things. Whereas like for video software, we generally import things. But we're going to place inside of Photoshop. And so you'll notice we get two options, place embedded and place linked. So what's the difference? Well, let's go ahead and use both. So if we import this image of SpongeBob and we use place embedded, you'll notice that it comes in, and the first thing we notice is that there's a bounding box around it, right? Or you might call it a free transform box, which allows us to reshape and rotate and move Bob around wherever we want him. Hit Command Z. And so right now that is live, and if I tried to do anything, I really couldn't, because as long as this free transform box is there, I have to deal with that first. So if this is how I want Bob to look, I can either click this checkbox up here at the top of the screen, or I can simply hit the return key. Now that we've done that, and again we used place embedded, now if we come over and look at our layers tab, you'll see a little icon right there. That little icon, if I hold my mouse over it, says Smart Object Thumbnail. And if I double click on it, it opens up that image in its own document. So essentially what a smart object does is it protects the image that you're working with inside of your document from making changes, and instead keeps a safe copy of that image in its own document, which is nice if you're not planning on doing a ton of stuff to this image. If it's just a decorative thing that you want to have in your shot, and knowing that if I move it around or resize it or do something to it in here, let's say I shrink it down and I get it really small and I move it off to the corner and hit return. And then the client comes back to me and they're like, no, SpongeBob needs to be way bigger in this image. Well, first off, the original SpongeBob is in this document, and so I haven't actually done anything to it. And if I come over here now and I hit Command T and I stretch it back out, because it's a smart object, it should still look pretty good. Notice that it's a little slightly jagged, but that's because this object is being stretched beyond its original size. So that is a smart object. And now the downside is if I came over and I wanted to take out a chunk of Bob's face, maybe using a lasso tool, I come over and maybe select his eyes and I want to copy and paste those, or I want to delete those. Right? If I hit the delete key, even though Bob is selected and even though I have a selection on top of him, if I hit the delete key, nothing happens. And the reason nothing happens is because it says could not place the document because the smart object is not directly editable. And again, that just means, I'm going to click OK, that just means that I can't edit this one the same way I could edit this one. So what do? Well, if it's important that I remove the eyes or make some change to it that it's not letting me do, then I need to decide, is it time to take this from being a smart object and commit it to pixels so that I can edit it? And I think the answer is yes. So I'm going to go over to the gray portion of this layer. I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose Rasterize Layer. And that basically commits it to being pixel based, and that will allow me to then make changes to it. So if I click rasterize layer, the first thing you'll notice is that my smart object icon goes away. But now with this selection, if I hit the delete key, I can delete portions of this image. So that is the main difference. And there's other tools as well, like the stamp tool or that also require this to be rasterized for this to work. Let's Command Z back. Let's get rid of Bob. And now let's go over and I'm going to hit Command D to deselect this selection. Now let's go over and go to File, Place Linked. And first off, what's the difference? Well, the difference is simply file size. If I go to Place Embedded, the one we used first, it literally moves the photograph into Photoshop. Whereas if I use Place Linked, it is now creating a link to wherever this image lives, and it's referencing it. Now, the difference is simply file size. Place Embedded is going to make your file size larger because it's literally moving the photo into your Photoshop document, whereas Place Linked will keep it smaller because it's referencing a file that lives on your computer or an external hard drive. For me, Place Embedded is just fine. I'm not working with super high-res images. This image is probably only a couple megabytes at the largest, so I have no problem using Place Embedded. If you want more information, in fact, here's an interesting thing. I Googled it just to see the pros and cons. And it says functionality. Place Embedded copies the file's data directly into Photoshop, increasing file size, while placing linked images, Place Linked creates a reference to an external file, keeping it smaller. So the pros are smaller file size if you use Place Linked, but the cons are that the linked file must be available in its location it was linked from. If moved or deleted, it will show up as missing. So again, this is kind of how video production works, where the video files all live in a folder and Adobe Premiere just references them. And if you move them, it loses the link and it will come up as missing, and then you have to fix it. So my point is just simply that unless you really need to keep your file size small or you're working with humongous images, use Place Embedded. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and hit the return key to remove this bounding box off of my SpongeBob so that we can look at the layer. So now you see there's a little there's a little linked icon right there on the layer. If I double click on it, just like a smart object, it takes me to its own layer. And again, if I try to remove the eyeball from this layer and I hit delete, notice that it says it's not directly editable. So even though it's a linked object, it's treated in the same way that a smart object is treated. And if this is still confusing you, don't worry about it. The solution is the same. Just right click and choose rasterize layer. And now, if I hit the delete key, it's going to delete that eye and let the white background show through. Again, I get that it's confusing, but the good news is the simple solution is just right click and choose rasterize layer, which commits it to pixels and allows you to edit it. Now, the next thing you might run into is something like a shape or even text. Let's do both. Let's grab a rectangle with our tool here. Where is it? In this case, let's grab a rectangle. So if I drag out a rectangle, and you'll notice that there's my rectangle shape. I have this blue bounding box around the outside of it. If I come up to the upper left corner, there's my fill color and my stroke, which is currently set to 0. If I want to change the fill color, I can click on that box and change the color. Okay, so I have this rectangle, and let's say that I want to notch out part of the inside of it. So I go over and I grab my rectangular marquee tool, I make sure to select the layer, and I drag out a box, and I hit the delete key, and nothing happens. could not use the rectangle because the content of this layer is not directly editable. We're hopefully starting to recognize a pattern here, okay? So if we look in the lower corner, we're not getting a smart object icon. What we're getting is a vector object icon, which is basically saying this is a shape layer. It's not made out of pixels. It's basically created using a mathematical algorithm that will allow you to stretch this layer as big as you want without losing any quality, because it's not pixel based. When you have a finite number of pixels, you can only stretch an image so big before it starts to fall apart. Essentially, the same way to fix this. Go over to the layer, right click, choose rasterize layer, and now with this marquee box laying on top of my selected rectangle, I can hit the delete key and it will do something. So again, turn on Bob, you can see there, we're seeing through that rectangle. And finally, let's throw some text up on the board here. And same thing. So text, just like shapes, is a vector. Now you're not seeing that little shape icon, but you're just gonna have to trust me on this one. It's the reason why we can scale it up, select it first, then scale it up without losing quality, right? See how those edges all still look pretty nice. So same thing applies. If I want to delete a portion of this and I grab a rectangular marquee and I drag it over, I select it and I hit delete, nothing happens. Okay? But if I right click on it and I rasterize it and then hit delete, you can see that it deletes the pixels. And as you can see, there you go. Now finally, if you're trying to work with a shape like a rectangle here and you drag it out and you get this nice shape with all these controls all over it, that is letting you know that it is a vector. This is what we call a path going around it, this blue line. It's also what this little icon right here refers to. If it's got a path, that means that it is a vector shape. And so in order to convert it into a pixel shape, I'm just simply going to right click, rasterize it, and you'll notice that the path goes away. And now if I come over and grab my polygon lasso and click once, click again, and then click here to make a selection, and then make sure that my layer is selected, which it is. And if I hit the delete key, boom, no more yellow triangle. And as you can see, this has worked. So again, this is just stuff that people commonly get confused with, and I just wanted to make a quick video that would help you guys with these topics.